You know,
All right, Corey, sounds like we're live. And Kina, we can only see about half of your face.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay.
And I can see the attendee count is starting to fill up.
That's always a good sign.
That is always a good sign. We've got over 100 people registered for the conversation.
All right, I love it.
right?
I wish we had the capability to have some like music, some upswell of music to sort of bring people into the conversation.
Donald could sing.
Oh, yeah, right. How about a little humming?
Mm.
The idea. I like the idea.
And we're sure no one can hear us chatting, right?
At this point, we are live, Donald.
Mhm.
Yeah, Donald. So everybody
Your
can hear
mic
you.
is on.
Your microphone is on.
Right.
Right. Karaoke webinar.
Oh, gives me the chills.
I was gonna say, I think, yeah, somebody's like, I didn't sign, this is not what I signed up for.
I'm in the wrong
That-
meeting.
That's actually like one of my dirty little secrets. I've never done karaoke in my life.
Ever?
Never.
I don't
One
know.
of my favorite
Sounds like that sounds like a challenge to me. That's sort of like throwing down a gauntlet. I feel like it could be my personal mission in life to fix that.
Maybe next time I'm in California. Okay.
Or next time I come to DC.
Yeah, okay.
How do you get out of it when you're at an HOK Interiors leadership group? There's always karaoke for that.
I just cheer everybody else on. I'm a great cheerleader. Besides, there's plenty of people that
Yeah.
relish that.
Mm.
I do not.
Awesome. I want to welcome everybody who's joining into the conversation as the panelists and moderator chit chat. It looks like the attendee list is just going up and up. I see it's great to see some familiar names and faces. We've got Anat, we've got Bonnie Thomas, Cheryl Johnson, Gina Clemens, Heather Mackin, lots of awesome, Jess Midden, Jacqueline Arroyo, Johnny Kung, Monique Cherez. Wow, it's going faster than I can count, but a lot of great IIDA Northern California names joining the list. So thank you guys all for joining us.
Hey, so
We
listen,
have-
I have to say, I've heard that the chat on these is pretty lively. So I'm going to throw down the gauntlet and say that I hope that you guys
On
live up to your
lively chat.
reputation of being lively in the chat.
Okay, I say let's do it. I am going to get started right on time. I know that we'll have attendees rolling in for the first like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of the conversation. So when we start off, we'll go through some administrative things first. And then we'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll really get rolling. The numbers, it's just going like dum, 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 dum. All right, it is 4 p.m. I'm just going to go ahead and say hi to everyone. Hello to our moderator and our panelists and everyone joining in the conversation. I am Meg Bruce Conway, and as the Vice President of Forums Northern California this year, I want to welcome you all to the conversation. As a committee, the Forums group made a 2022 pandemic pivot, and the city centers collaborated to bring you 2 incredible events this month. So the events are aligned with IIDA's overall theme of designing for wellness And as you'll see in this conversation and the next, the team did a phenomenal job pulling together exceptional moderators and panelists. Seriously, we are super excited for these discussions. A quick reminder, this is the first of 2 forums this year. Each qualifies for 1 CEU. And with our second forum is coming up on April 21st, which you'll be able to attend in person or virtually. It'll be held at the Uber headquarters in San Francisco, and we'll tell you more about that at the end of this conversation. There will be a Q&A during this conversation that you can put your questions in the Q&A. You can upvote people's questions so that they bubble to the top. And Corey Bradbury from IIDA Fresno City Center will be helping to moderate the questions along with myself while the panelists are speaking. First, I want to, as always, give a very warm thanks to our IIDA chapter sponsors, without whom none of our chapter initiatives would be possible. Thank you, sponsors. We appreciate you. And then to kick off this forum specifically, it is my incredible honor to introduce our moderator for today, the man, the myth, the legend, Donald Cremers.
Oh, Meg.
As Senior Principal and Project Interior Designer with HOK, Donald deftly combines his incredible design sensibility with a uniquely thoughtful communication style to produce gorgeous projects across workplace, healthcare, and institutional markets, as well as award-winning designs for flooring and fabric products. He's been an important staple of the IIDA community in Northern California for as long as I can remember, which is a very long time at this point. He's served in various roles, including president, and he's a notably friendly face in any crowd. The fact that so many of us look up to Donald as a mentor and leader, paired with his experience and thoughtfulness, make him the perfect moderator and host for our conversations today.
Thank you,
So
Meg.
with that, Donald, take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm excited for this conversation today. It's a really big topic, and it's something that's probably really front and center for everyone. As we look back on these past couple of years that have been unlike anything we could have ever imagined before, living through this COVID pandemic, and a pandemic that hasn't gone away yet either. We may sort of feel more comfortable in our environment now, but as we look around the world, it's certainly not the case in other parts of the world. And in my background, I've done a lot of healthcare design, and of course, wellness was always part of what we were thinking about in healthcare. But in the last 10 years or so, it's really taken a role, I think, in all of the designers and the architects' work. So much so that you can actually now certify projects around wellness. And all 3 of our panelists today have just amazing experience around this. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce them now. Our first panelist is Kina David, and she's the Director of Sustainability, Wellness, and ESG for BCCI Construction. And ESG, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the acronym, stands for Environmental, Social, and Justice. With a background in sustainability, green building, and chemistry, Kina leads BCCI's sustainability team by shaping departmental initiatives and supporting project teams to achieve client sustainability goals. In addition to her lead AP, WELL AP, and FitWell ambassador credentials, Kina is also a WELL faculty member. Her project experience includes dozens of LEED certifications and the world's first LEED version 4 for commercial interiors platinum certified project. That's pretty amazing. She's also consulted on over a dozen WELL projects, including several firsts as the program became established more recently. Additionally, Kina has been recognized in the industry as the recipient of the 2017 Elevate Rising Rockstar Award from Crew Bay Area chapters, the Northern California Women in Real Estate Rising Star Award, a 2019 IWBI Leadership Award, and a 2020 IWBI Community Award. Clearly an amazing woman who is well respected by so many people in the industry. She's currently serving on the board of directors for Crew San Francisco. Our next panelist comes to us from the Midwest. Dr. Lauren Gant is a senior ergonomics and wellness strategist at HNI. Lauren's background in biomedical engineering allows her to apply human factors and ergonomics principles to the design of office furniture and to research emerging trends in the office environment. Her goal is to ensure that the products HNI produces encourages healthy postures, promotes productivity, and that they're intuitive to use correctly for a broad spectrum of worker types, sizes, capabilities. Lauren has taught engineering and ergonomics courses at the university level. She's conducted extensive research in the field of ergonomics and holds a doctoral degree in biomedical engineering from the U of I. Lauren's an adjunct associate professor at the University of Iowa, a member of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, and is a certified professional ergonomist. Along with that, she's a well-credited professional, a well advisor, and a FitWell ambassador as well. And then finally, we have Kay Sargent, who I can't really pin where she might be located at any given time, but right now she's on the East Coast with us. So we're kind of representing all across North America this evening. So Kay Sargent is a co-director of HOK's Workplace Team, a practice that supports organizations undertaking multiple projects in various locations, and a member of HOK's board of directors. In this role, Kay is responsible for helping clients redefine how, when, and where their people work, and supports a holistic design approach that integrates an organization's people, processes, and technology. I love this part. She was recently selected from her field of peers to provide expert testimony to the US House of Representatives on federal real estate post-COVID-19, a view from the private sector. If there's anyone that could speak to this group of people, Kay would be the one for that. Kay is considered an industry thought leader on workplace. She's authored multiple white papers and articles on a variety of design-related topics, including well-being, next-gen workforce, technology's impact on the workplace, space fusion, and rise of the human factor. She was named ASID's Designer of Distinction for 2020, and she's a fellow of both IIDA and ASID. And like Kina and Lauren, she's a lead and well-accredited professional. And along with being an advisor or a board member to several professional organizations, Kay is a founder of the DC chapter of Upward, a global network dedicated to the professional advancement of women in the workplace. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what these women have to say and the conversation between them. And while all of these women have a great background in workplace, we're really thinking about the environment more broadly than that as well. And really thinking about what's going on now, really thinking about how we gather in groups, whether it might be on a BART train or a bus, or it might be at a social event, or it might be a sporting event or a concert, or it might be back in the office together, someplace where we haven't been for the last couple of years for most of us. So what I'd like to do now is start the conversation and start off talking about sort of the big picture of well. And from this image here that Lauren shared with us from All Steel and HNI, it really talks about the human experience and all the different elements and issues that play into that. And really kind of what we see sort of rising to the top as part of our conversation today is all around culture and change and people's choice and how all of that factors into well-being. So Lauren, I'm going to lead this off with you. How can we distinguish authentic physical and mental wellness initiatives versus those that are just merely theater? And how can designers effectively then interface with the users to really create environments that are truly healthy and supportive of wellness?
Well, thank you for the introduction and for this question. I think this is really a great place to start, because I would love to just frame up the conversation with defining what we mean when we're talking about well-being and wellness, and what a real well-being initiative is. when we talk about this, we want to think holistically. We want to think about ongoing and sustaining commitments, not just about treating illnesses, but thinking proactively. Holistic wellness, takes the complete human into account, mental, physical, emotional, and really has the goal of creating spaces and environments and policies that promotes health and comfort and safety and connection and inclusivity and all the ways we show up to thrive at work. So it's not just about preventing or it's not just about fixing something when it's broken, it's really about promoting that. And for this group, including the considerations for wellness and the design of the spaces is so essential, because then there's no barrier to entry, right, in participating in these wellness at some level. There's nothing you have to opt into. It's being included in the space and really considering that holistically. Where I get concerned, and I think why I like this question so much, is that we have seen many people talk about wellness in a way that's maybe a misnomer. So they have only part of the picture covered and they call that a wellness program. So maybe you get a stipend for a gym membership and there we're done, that's our wellness program. And while that stipend might be part of a holistic, group of initiatives and a more holistic consideration, that in itself is just one small element. Or offering an employee assistance program. This can be super helpful and it's very meaningful, but it in itself does not constitute a meaningful, successful wellness initiative in the office. And this misclassification of wellness program is frankly, I think a little bit scary because we start seeing headlines, we start seeing claims that wellness programs don't work then. Wellness programs work, and we have the research to show that. But just labeling something a wellness initiative and packaging that is, when it's not sustaining, when it's not meaningful, will not give you the benefits you're looking for as a company. So I think for this conversation, design and designers are so important now, and we can really start implementing wellness in the design because the environment is such a critical element to well-being. And we really have the opportunity to impact people's work and their comfort and their performance even when we're thinking about creating spaces for humans that are healthy. And we can talk about more of the specifics later, but I just love the opportunity to frame up that conversation about what we're really talking about when we talk about wellness.
So Donald, can I tag in on what Lauren was saying? Because Lauren, we had a great conversation about one of those misnomers. There's actually a book out there right now that is saying wellness programs don't work. And in a sense, what the author is really referring to when he says wellness programs is employee assistance programs, which are typically stipends that a company will give. And on average, they're coming out of HR and they typically are like, $750 to $1,000 an employee. And what we know is less than 5% of employees ever tap into or leverage that. So there's a lot of money that's not being utilized. But a holistic well-being program that includes the design of well-being elements in the workplace, you get 100% participation, because the second you walk into a space, you are participating whether you want to or not, because you're in a space that's been designed. So I think that's probably the biggest misnomer that's out there. And, I think we all have to admit, and we really suck in this industry with our terminology. We cross it all the time. Right. And this is one of those examples when it's not being really represented well, I don't think.
Right. Well, do you think the WELL program has a good definition of wellness? I mean, it's such a broad word, but when you talk with clients, when any of you talk with clients, do they understand what wellness is in the world that we're talking?
I just had a really interesting conversation with a few of the employees at WELL Building saying, is it wellness or is it well-being? Yes. What is the right terminology? Right.
the word.
Even within this industry,
Yeah.
I think there's some conversation happening. And I was told we're heading towards well-being.
Yes.
I think there is some concern that what the word wellness is getting used by maybe some less than scientific based groups, if that's fair to say. So even within our industry, I think, or even within the niche of wellness, I think there's some confusion about what the proper terminology is.
Yeah, and I think it's because wellness typically refers to your physical wellness. Well-being is a more encompassing term that talks about your financial well-being, your social well-being, your economic well-being, your network, your community, your family, and your emotional and physical well-being. So it's a more comprehensive
More
term.
global, yeah.
And I think wellness is maybe tied more to the idea of healing as well, whereas well-being is just simply a state of being, and you want to always be there.
I want to just also add on to this, one of the statistics that IWBI likes to publish about health and well-being is over 50%, I think it's around 60-some% of the contributors to that health and well-being is actually your physical and social environment. So when we think about the design of our spaces, we really have a huge opportunity to impact individuals' lives.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That
Fantastic.
design can't be a barrier at minimum, and at most, at its best, it's fostering that, it's promoting that.
So building on that, how can designers effectively interface with their clients around this subject and around building solutions that are healthy and promote well-being?
Yeah, so we always say there's 3 ways that we can do it. It's by default, by design, and by documentation. So we tell our clients that if you come to us and you say, we're only going to be in this space a year, we don't even care, we don't even know what you're talking about, we don't care. By default, you're going to get it because it's baked into our DNA now. And as design professionals, we feel like there's a moral obligation to do the right thing. And so we're going to do it. And once you learn how to do something right, it's really hard to unlearn that, right? So we just roll it in there. And they'll never know, right? But they're going to benefit. The second category is by design. And I think a lot of our clients fall into this category, which is we want to be good corporate citizens, but we don't necessarily need that plaque on the wall. So we call that kind of ABC, all but certified. Okay. And then the third is we want documentation. We want to go all the way. We want to get the plaque on the wall. We want to do, the recertifications, et cetera. So by default, by design, or by documentation, it's really up to our clients, but they're going to get it from us one way or another. And it won't even hurt.
I
So
love that
Enrique-
idea of by default too. Just doing it because we know it's good design and it'll make our spaces successful is really, I think, a great place to start. I've heard people talk about ADA. I wasn't in the industry when ADA was sort of made official, but just that that there was a lot of trepidation and fear about what does this mean? Are we doing all of these things for a seemingly small percentage of the population? And now it's just become part of our ethos because we know that universal design is good for everyone, right? It's not just for a special population, but everybody is getting the benefits of this. And I think we're getting there towards wellness too. This idea of it's good for everybody and it should just be part of our ethos.
When we started these certification programs, it was kind of a one stamp and we were done with it. But well is completely different than that. It really is about how people function in a space, how people use a space, and how a company or a corporation really provides an environment for their employees. Is there any pushback from clients when they actually understand if they're going to go through and get a wellness documentation that they've signed on to it for a long time?
Yes. I mean, a lot of our clients are afraid that they're signing up for something that they don't really understand the extent, and they're signing up other people in their company. So, one of the wonderful things about the WELL standard and, even FitWell or whatever, but they really are much more holistic. And so it takes facility managers, it takes HRs, it takes your, your travel team, it takes all of those individuals. And it's not a one and done, you walk away. it is something that you have to continue. So you are committing for a longer term, multiple people, and for a lot of people, they don't necessarily even know what they're really agreeing or committing to, and that unknown is a little unsettling. So we have absolutely seen some people push back on that, but I do believe it's the right thing to do, because you had a lot of people that moved into LEED certified buildings that then realized they weren't being operated in that way, and they were paying a premium for something that wasn't happening, and what was the point?
Right, right.
Yeah,
But
it's
in
one thing to put in a great filtration system, but if you never change the filters and you know, what is the purpose of that?
Or if the recycle ends up in the trash the second it leaves the building, what was the point, right?
Right. But along with the people who it's their job, whether it's the facilities group or HR, it also allows the broader group of people in the environment to be part of that team as well. So it really allows everyone to participate, which is really a great thing for community and culture within an organization as well.
You know, one thing that we've seen more recently is the projects that were initially going through the WELL certification are at the 3-year mark where they need to recertify. And
Oh, wow.
as they're going through that, they're also realizing some things that may have worked and some things that they might want to change. You know, I think we can get a little bit more into this as the conversation continues, but when people are returning, they're realizing what is going to work and what's not. And what different functionalities are really needed. So it's tying the occupant experience more towards the kind of ongoing performance of the building and having that flexibility to adjust for where we're at today.
Great. All right.
Well said.
Well, I'm going to shift the focus a little bit now and think about what we've learned over the last couple of years. So I'm going to put this question to Kay. I'm curious how you see our collective experience of living and working through a pandemic. How has that changed our view of wellness in the built environment? And has it shifted the conversation between our clients and our design community, designers and architects, furniture manufacturers, furniture designers? Has the conversation shifted now because of this crazy experience of 2 years? And who's involved in the conversation now? Now I'll let you speak.
Yeah, I was going to say yes. In fact, I think the pandemic was pouring fuel on a fire that was already burning. And it was a trigger event for a lot of our clients to do what we have been talking about for some time. But I think there are two or three really hard realities that we need to wake up to. Okay. Number one is that for years we designed offices for the average person, but I defy anybody to define who the average person is today. So one size fits all. We got to stop that. Okay. Number two, for years we designed offices as the place you had to go to. And Lauren, by the way, I am old enough that I was around when ADA was brought out, and I did surveys around the country. But I go even beyond that. You know, I go to a point where you didn't have computers, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have cell phones. You had to go to the office to work. We don't have to do that anymore. And the question is, has the office kept up with the fact that we now need to create enticing enough environments and experiences that people choose to come to because they don't have to anymore? And I also think that we're at a point now where this could be our industry's Kodak moment. Our industry is ripe for disruption. Does anybody believe that when a client comes to you and says, I need to get into space, the right answer is, I can get you in 9 months for a 10-year lease that you'll have furniture that will ugly out before it wears out? I mean, we are not being responsive enough to the needs of the dynamic needs of businesses today. And we need to really rethink this. And so I believe that we have an unbelievable opportunity right now to really design with courage, to break the status quo, to think differently, to go outside of the box, because the entire world is looking at this point, and we have a chance to reshape everything. And in my 37-year career, we've only come close to something like this twice. Once was the dot bomb, and the other one was after September 11th, when all of a sudden security and locations and should we be in big cities was really questioned, but nothing to the same level that we are experiencing now. And if we drop the ball and don't take advantage of this because we're too nervous that we can't define every single thing, then we're going to miss out.
Okay, in some of our conversations prior to this, as we were getting to know each other, you had some really interesting statistics about what you see happening out there. And
Yeah.
I was just hoping you could share some of that, because I think our audience will find that fascinating.
Yeah, so we look, I mean, we got tons and tons of statistics. I mean, I think what we're seeing right now is that 70% of companies are going to adopt hybrid. And I think it's the right thing to do, but it's not the easy thing to do. And I think companies are going to grossly underestimate the amount of effort it's going to take. We're in the wild west of this right now. And I think we're in for a very bumpy 18 months as we all work this out. There's a whole lot of people that are saying, you know, the percentage of people that don't want to go back to work. Look, I kind of look at it like we're a bunch of kids at the end of summer who don't want school to start again, but we know once it does, it's for our own good, and there's going to be some benefit. Now, that doesn't mean that it's right for everyone, okay? But I think that people hate transition, and we are in an extruded transition right now. The other thing I think we're seeing right now is a massive percentage of our clients, at least 50% of our big corporate clients, have adopted activity-based working, or what we're calling free choice environments, really kind of neighborhood-based free choice, kind of that next level of ABW. And about even higher percentage than that, like in the mid 50%, is really adopting more gathering spaces. But we also need to remember, you know, very rarely do you just gather all day, right? That you also need to make sure that that is balanced. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing I would say, Donald, is, you know, there's this big debate about productivity. It's not just about productivity. It's also about innovating, and it's about innovation, and can companies even stay relevant? And it's about the quality of work. And people aren't talking about whether quality has suffered, whether mentoring is continuing, whether what has happened with you know, capital, social capital, and the building of that, because that has been somewhat eroded. Because another statistic is that 55% of communication is nonverbal, and we're running really low on the built up social capital we had. And I think it's starting to become evident that we're running low on that, and we need to refuel that, because we are social creatures and we thrive on that. It doesn't mean you need to be there 5 days a week, but we need to create spaces that are balanced.
Yeah.
And if I may,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Donald. If I may add, I think I agree with Kate, and I would also add that it's almost employees have become consumers of their workspaces as well. We're sort of shopping for workspaces, it seems, or and so creating those spaces that are worth the commute, that do drive that connection, that foster that productivity, you know, can be really meaningful conversations right now too.
Yeah,
do you
okay,
think
so I'm going to say something really controversial, Donald. So watch the chat, because I'm about to make a bunch of people unhappy. I'm the mother of 5 children. I do believe there is such a thing as a stupid question, and I think we're asking a bunch of them right now. I think that there's absolutely a science to design, and whether people should be working and where they should be working is not a matter of what do you want, okay? Because, you know, just because you can do something or you want to do something doesn't mean that it's right for you, and or it's right for your coworkers, and or it's right for the company. And I think we need to be thinking more about what are your work styles, what are your gathering profiles, what are your mobility program, you know, policies, and what is your internal mobility versus external mobility? You know, are you hypo or hyper sensitive? There's like 6 or 7 things that I think are really fundamental, that if you answered those questions, it would tell you you're a really good candidate for this, or yeah, you're really not. And I think we need to be leveraging the science of design and asking smarter questions, because asking somebody who's been working remotely for the first time ever, when all their coworkers are also working remotely, what they want to do going forward is like asking somebody what their favorite dish is at a restaurant they've never eaten it before. You know, they have not experienced this, Well, now all of a sudden people are back and I'm not part of certain conversations that are happening when the Zoom call ends, or at the water cooler, or I'm not, proximity bias and things like that. And you can work around that and you can get around that, but that's where it takes a lot of work. And what we want to make sure is that hybrid isn't the worst of everything. It's the best, but to make it the best of everything, it takes a lot of work, and not a lot of companies are up to that challenge right now. They don't even know what they should be asking or inquiring or doing. And so I think we're in for a rough period right now.
Fascinating. I just saw an article a couple days ago interviewing top people from 2 or 3 companies, and they're saying, oh, this hybrid thing's only going to last 3 years, 5 years at the most. And they're doing it now because they have to do it now, but they think 3 years, 5 years from now, they're going to make everyone come back to their workplace and their organization. Do you hear conversations like that?
I'd like to have their crystal ball, that's for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the crystal ball is there, right? So I'm a firm believer in 1 + 1 = 2. We all know that the tech companies thrive on the synergy of people being together and failing fast. And that when you're trying to innovate, being together is one of the most important things. I mean, Steve Jobs built one of the most expensive buildings on the planet because he believed so strongly in the power of that synergy and people being together, okay? And all the tech companies, that's really their culture, is they're building and have built campuses that are so attractive, you never want to leave, okay? And by the way, the same time, they are now finally acquiescing and telling people they can continue to work from home because they've gotten such pushback from their employees. Every single one of them are building campuses somewhere in the United States. They're not building those campuses because they're anticipating they're going to sit empty, right? Mm-hmm. So 1 + 1 = 2.
And I would add that I don't think it's sufficient to say people need to go back to the office to thrive. I think people also to thrive, to be innovative, and to be progressive, you also need an environment in which you feel like you psychologically safe, you feel like you can take risks, you feel like you are empowered to speak up and innovate. If you're going back but you don't feel heard, you don't feel comfortable, I think though that's an opposition to this idea that you can be innovative and progressive. So it's not just come back to the office, it's come back to the office, consider the whole person, make them comfortable, make them feel safe, or allow them to feel safe and heard and seen. And then we can innovate and be creative.
Yeah, Laura, that's a great point, because all of our research that we've been doing about neurodiversity, we pivoted about 2.5 years ago, right before the pandemic, to really focus a little bit more on sensory processing, because everybody, even neurotypicals, we are being assaulted by stuff that is coming at us, and we all handle that differently. And so some people thrive being remote because they don't get overwhelmed, but other people have really suffered because they need the energy or the direction or the routine or the social interaction or the guidance that they might get. And so again, it just goes back to that one size fits all, right? That we need to empower people with options, choices, and give them some kind of control. If I gave one bit of advice to companies, it would be that. Give people options, choices, and some level of control so they feel some of those things that Lauren was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the flexibility in the spaces that we design as well is going to help with allowing people the choice within the spaces to work where they feel most accomplished or best for that task, which is another big part of the well-building standard.
Well, Kina, you and your team are really literally out in the field all the time. So I was curious, from your point of view, what are some real life examples of design that incorporates really authentic wellness initiatives? And how do the ESG principles, as part of your title and part of something that you're passionate about, how do they support a framework for this?
So, one of the things that we have seen a lot most recently is some of the stuff that you can't actually see. So a lot of the design trends have been moving towards, views of the outdoors, connection to nature, huddle zones, phone rooms, benching, or open workstation plans with flexibility. But what we're learning now is that it really comes down to acoustics and air quality. So there's been a lot of improvements on the projects that we've seen most recently on air quality, whether it's filtration or air purification systems, monitoring air quality, but also acoustics. So going from the lives that we have in our own living rooms, as some of us are, to going back into the office and having people Zoom in an open office environment needs change. And so we're having a lot of clients who are starting to come back saying, hey, what can we do about additional baffles or sound masking, or let's have 5 new phone rooms, but make sure that they're deck to deck partitions so the acoustics are really good. So that's kind of the main thing we're seeing there. I would say from kind of a ESG or sustainability framework, the increase of air quality and the occupants' demand for higher filtration is definitely going to have an impact on the energy use of our buildings. And so we need to just look at it in a more of a holistic approach in that way. And I think some cities, especially in California, are moving more towards electrification and really pushing to that net zero space, which will help to have good indoor air quality and energy, and eventually outdoor air quality if we're not using a bunch of gas.
Right, right. Do you see clients trying to harvest outdoor air more and outdoor workplace, indoor, outdoor connections?
I would love to see that more, but the other thing is we need to understand what's going on in our outdoor environments as well. So especially in California, one of the things we know and we've learned over COVID is that having an increase of outdoor air supply helps dilute the concentration of potential viruses in the air. And you might be located in downtown Los Angeles on a really smoggy day, and maybe bringing in outdoor air is not going to be beneficial for the outcome and the productivity of your occupants. Maybe it's fire season, which is a huge reality for all of us here on the West Coast and really all over the United States these days. So go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, I have to chime in here because Lord, you got to weigh in here with me, right? So as someone who lives on the East Coast, where literally we're coming out of months of snow, I always find it funny when I'm doing projects in California and people are talking about, well, how do we get circadian lighting, in the space, or we want, more fresh air. It's like literally five minutes, like 5 seconds away, 5 feet away on the other side of that wall is everything that you need, right? So the ability and the fact that you guys really, in many parts of the year, have the amazing climate that you take advantage of. I would love to see you do that more, because we're doing all kinds of stuff here. Like we're putting terraces on rooftops in Washington just so that people can get that kind of stuff. So I think we are seeing a huge increase in people wanting more access to outdoor space, and to kind of address some of those things. But you guys, man, you got it in spades.
I do have to go back to
affective disorder is a real thing in the Midwest.
Yeah. One of the things you said earlier, Kay, about kind of learning from some of these tech companies who really have been on the forward end of building for wellness and wellness design, is having areas, like really large areas that are conducive to working outdoors, but are also secure and still in the building with the amenities of the break room and the restrooms and all of that. So, we are seeing it. I do know an example of, I think it's Gensler Space in downtown LA, who actually installed operable windows over the last couple of years in a high-rise building that does not traditionally have operable windows. So I think people are being really creative about that.
Mhm.
And then the next step is making sure that if there is this great outdoor space, or if there is operable windows, that people feel welcome and supported to use that, but there's not some cultural signal that, oh, if you're, sitting on the lawn, you must not be busy enough. We have to also think we can create these spaces, but the culture also should support the use of them.
Right, you guys ready to see my Donald Kramer impersonation? Not that I do it really good, but Donald, you asked an amazing question when we were all kind of talking before. And Kina, I think I would love to hear you talk about this again. We talked about, ESGs, environmental, social, the governance. And Donald, you asked, like, is well-being counterintuitive to sustainability? Are they in sync with each other?
That was my next question, Kay.
Oh. Well, see, I'm channeling you, Donald. I'm
Go
channeling
ahead,
you.
go
I wanna
ahead.
keep you when I grow up, right? So we talked about triage.
He really does have that crystal ball, I think.
Yeah. So we talked about triage and how right now we're triaging a little bit. So Kina, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I think the wellness aspect or the well-being aspect that we're seeing in design really relates to the S and the social piece for ESG. There is obviously an environmental piece that comes to a portion of it, but really what we're seeing is the designing for wellness and well-being is much more to the community and the employees there. And then it kind of bleeds a little bit into the governance piece because there are so many aspects to design and operating a well environment that have to do with the policies you have for your employees and how you are giving them benefits, giving them autonomy, supporting what's needed, having an employee assistance program, whatever that may be, in addition to, right? And so I think it's really kind of tying in the occupant experience into the social piece of ESG.
Yeah, I wish we could juggle more than one or two things at a time, but it seems like we always microly, we focus on one thing and then everything else kind of goes on the wayside. A great conversation today with a client of ours who basically isn't focusing as much right now on security, even though we all know that cyber threats are an increasing thing that is likely in this as this war goes on. But the focus right now is so much on these other things that it's like the capacity to deal with that has kind of diminished. And somehow we have to get to a point that we can juggle more than one or two things at a time.
Right. All right. I have a couple more questions, but I want to make sure the audience has a chance for questions as well. And Corey and Meg, I can't see any questions come through. I can't see chat.
No
So
problem. No
I'm going to
problem.
throw it back to you for a few minutes if you want to provide some of the questions from our audience.
I can help with that. And
Great.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
I will throw out one from Tim Haggerty that talks about Kay's comment that we're asking stupid questions is right on the mark. Business norms have already changed and we need to adapt. Our industry, however, has often been slow to adapt to even lesser challenges. Is real change to come from the top down? Leave it to Tim to just keep it really light and simple. Right now, that's the only question. So I will also encourage other participants to throw some questions in the chat, but I think that's a great one. So let me just pose the question again. Our industry has been slow to adapt to lesser challenges. Is real change to come from the top down? Panelists?
I
can start it.
Yeah.
I think, we have a real opportunity to use the fire and the energy that people have around the pandemic to implement some of the things that we have known for 15, 20 plus years that are, like Kay mentioned earlier, backed by science. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that we have to move forward in the right way. I hope that it's not going to be kind of stuck in a quick fix. Let's just figure out how to get back into the office after a pandemic, and that we're doing it in a more thoughtful way. And I would hate to see a bunch of plastic barriers in between people and desk spaces to live on.
I think that's great, Kina. I was going to say something similar, that knee-jerk reaction is often not the best one. So I think it's okay that we assess and take a minute and pause, but we often do this pendulum swing, like we go all the way to one side and then we come all the way back, and so avoiding that is probably fine. So we can't wait until the research is perfect, right? We just because that's too late. We're never going to have perfect research, but we have strong indications that, you know, the things that are outlined in Well or that are outlined in Fit Well are good things to do. And so I agree. I hope we can use this time as a push off that cliff to get there.
Right.
So I apologize. I am crashing in on our cleaning people and they were vacuuming, so I had to go ask them to stop. So that's what happens when you're here at night, right? So my bad, I'm crashing in all the time. But I'm going to say, Donald, I think we are ripe for disruption. There are 10 questions that we have asked recently. We have a presentation called is this our Kodak moment? And I don't mean Instagram moment, but Kodak moment, where Kodak invented digital photography, but their business was selling film. And so they shelved digital photography, and, you know, look what happened to them because of that, right? So they knew innovation was at hand. And I think every single one of us can say that there are things about our industry right now that are just not working and or aren't being as responsive as they need to be and need to be revolutionized. And somebody else is going to come around and make us obsolete. If you think about this, Uber, Airbnb, all of these industries that have been rocked aren't rocked because somebody figured out to produce the same thing faster. They changed the game and created a better experience. And the question is, are we going to use this moment to change what it is that we're doing to really truly address what people want and to create better experiences? Or are we just going to default and go back to what we always have done, and then we're going to become obsolete?
And I think Tim's question is really great about, is this change to come from the top down? And I think the alternative is bottom up, right? And these things are not sustainable unless they have real backing to them. So I think that is required there. I hope, Kina mentioned before, getting input, getting insight from the people that are using the space and how they're doing their job and what they need to be productive. So I hope it's both, but I think that top-down approach to make it sustaining, to make it part of, a company's culture, that is an important element.
Thank you, guys. So we have one more question that has popped up in the chat from the audience. Saren Pearson writes, do you think the post-COVID landscape will accelerate the well-being conversation for organizations that employ more essential workers? And essential is in quotes. It feels like the tech community is leading the way, but what about folks who weren't able to work from home and aren't having conversations about what the return to the office looks like because they never had the opportunity to leave?
That's
so the interesting statistic there is that only 40% of the workforce ever even had the choice to work remotely.
Wow.
60% of the workforce did not have that option, whether they were hospital workers, service industry, lab workers, they had specialized equipment, whatever. They didn't have the opportunity to do that. So we've spent a whole lot of our attention on a group of people who are pretty damn privileged and even have the ability to do that. And I think we do need to think more holistically about how are we addressing everything for all workers going forward. I will say, though, that I do believe that we're taking some things too far, right? Like, some lessons we don't learn, and then other ones we take to a ridiculous level, like the amount of plastic that we're doing and the amount of cleaning that we're doing. Again, mother of five, I don't think we eat enough dirt. And the studies have actually showed that over sanitizing is actually bad and is reducing our resistance and is compromising our ability to be as strong as we need to be. And, you know, the environmental impact in the beginning, we were all celebrating, oh my God, like the animals are taking over. This is amazing, right? Like, look, we're going to save the earth because of this. But the plastic and the packaging that is happening and the amount of delivery trucks that are on the streets and everything else, it's out of control and it's out of whack. And most of our houses are not as energy as efficient as our buildings. In the meantime, the buildings are still running and we all are living in our houses running all of that. And so we you know, this has shifted the conversation, and we have to think really differently to address things because the problem has changed.
I think this question really highlights another phenomenon that's happening, is sort of this division of essential versus non-essential, and all of unpacking all of that, and how, you know, I've spoken with people who have been in the office in its entirety and also feel like the decisions about their safety are being made by people who have been working from home. So this idea of, you know, is my voice heard? Are you listening to what I do and what I need to feel safe and secure, as well as what the science is telling us? You know, I think it's a really interesting new dichotomy we're seeing in the office as well.
I just want to add to this, speaking from someone who works at a general contractor. We went back into our offices May 4th, and the reason of 2020. And the reason for that was because our field employees were going back to the job sites. And so there was kind of an equity piece in there for us of, well, if we are, you know, promoting our teams to be on site, we need to show up in the same way for them as well. You know, some of the things that I think are positive from the job sites under construction right now are we have a heightened amount of hand sanitization stations, as well as increased air quality measures during the whole time that people are working on the space before the mechanical systems are built and turned on, and filtering the air for the people working eventually. So I think there are some good things coming out of it. I would be curious to see what's happening in the healthcare industry, to the people who work 24 hours straight and, you know, never see the light of day and probably have a really not healthy cafeteria to go to as well.
That's a good point. Great.
We have a great question from Berta too, and I really want to answer it.
I was going to say, great, thank you. Yeah, so we have a couple questions from Berta, our current IIDA president. She asks, how do we truly deal with wellness in the workplace when it seems work is what actually might be toxic, the erosion of work-life balance, even more with work from home, long hours, competitiveness, focus on productivity, and often without a living wage. So how do we deal with wellness in the workplace when work might actually be what's toxic?
Okay, so I'm going to say that we know a lot more than we're leveraging, and there really is a science to design. And as designers, we need to start really tapping into the elements and the principles of design. There is so much misunderstanding out there about acoustics. There is so much misunderstanding about other dynamics, and we know better, right? And so we know that every person right now is being assaulted by the sensory stimulation that is coming at them. Everybody has a heightened sensitivity to how close they are to people, to what they're touching, to what they're smelling, etc. Mathlog's hierarchy of needs. If people don't feel safe and their basic needs aren't met, they cannot thrive and they cannot do anything else. So we have to start thinking about how are we creating environments that make people feel safe. And if I'm assigning somebody to sit in a desk that is hypersensitive to sound and visual distractions, and I don't care where I put them, I just assign them to a desk randomly, I could sabotage that person's ability to be effective and to be healthy and to be sane and even to just have any calm or personal comfort from day one, 8 hours a day, they're under assault, right? So we know a lot more, and we need to start thinking about how do we create a variety of settings and that really focus on what people are doing and allow them to naturally migrate to those spaces that they feel comfortable. And in some cases, that might be working from home. For other people, working from home is the kiss of death, and they don't want to, and they need to be coming in. But I think it's understanding that this is a messy, complex problem, but trying to oversimplifying it with guidelines and standards that are meant to the typical person and making everybody have to deal with the exact same thing. What we have done in our industry is the equivalent of basically giving everybody a size 10 pink jumpsuit, man and woman, boy and girl, 40-year-old and 10-year-old, and say, here it is, wear it, good luck. We have got to start really customizing environments so that people can find the spaces where they can thrive and they want to be.
My news feeds might be, my algorithms might be a little bit skewed, but the word burnout shows up in my news, headlines every day. I mean, that word do you guys agree? It feels like everybody's talking about burnout now. And in one hand, that's great because it's getting some attention. At the other side of that is, if we're talking about burnout, it's too late. People are not being productive. They're not, contributing in the way that they should be. So how do we start talking about that before you get into this environment where my workplace is toxic, I'm burnt out, I just cannot do what I need to do anymore. And I love this idea of, keeping our empathy high. I think a lot of us are experiencing pandemic fatigue, but I think with that, we get a little bit of empathy fatigue too. So we're, we've all been going through stuff. What is that quote? We're all in the same storm, but in different boats, right? So we've all sort of gone through this global thing together, but our individual experiences of that have been completely individual. So having some, sustaining that empathy for, one person cannot work at home, another has to work at home. I think that one size fit all. What did you say? One size misfits all. I love that.
One size misfits all. But
really,
Vera
really
alluded something in her comment. She said, people that are working from home, they tend to be more productive because they're working longer hours. And sitting on a Zoom call for 1 hour is the mental draining equivalent of being in a physical meeting for 2. Okay, so it is taking a toll on us, and most people aren't moving as much. They're not as active. If you're supposed to take 10,000 steps a day, the average American before COVID took 3,500. During COVID, it dropped to 1,500. 1,500. Right. And so we're just now starting to see the ripple effects of people staring at computer screens in unergonomic settings in their kitchens for 10 hours a day, feeling guilty and not being able to move and not having any social reaction.
And on top of that, being concerned that their little green presence light went yellow, or worried that they're not going to show up for their boss the same way that they used to, or there's a lot of stress there too.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Well, we have reached the end of an hour, and I think from what Meg said, we can keep talking, although I have to step away. But to wrap this up, I would love to hear something from each of the three of you. And I'm going to actually take the question that we talked about, and I'm going to merge it with Verda's question. So what you wanted to talk about, Kay, was what are you three seeing coming down the line that we here in the audience aren't even thinking about? And Verda wants something much simpler than that even, but just give one example of your favorite wellness solution. So each of you pick one of those two questions and give us a nice wrap up.
Yeah, I'm really worried about what we're not paying attention to. And we could really start creating a class of workers and tiers of workers, people that can and people that can't, and there can be resentment. And a lot of programs have failed because of resentment, or they don't have the policies. And, I think, we're focusing a lot right now on health equity. It's not evenly distributed. Not everybody has the same experience. For some people working remotely, it's dangerous. We haven't seen the numbers about domestic violence or alcoholism or, you know, domestic abuse or any of those things, but we're going to start seeing those things soon. And it's going to knock us all to our cores. And then, you know, I think not everybody has access to the same things. So I think we really need to make sure equity is being addressed. And we need to create environments where everyone feels that they can be successful, or solutions and options that they do. And so I think that's the thing that worries me is what we, you know, how this could evolve.
Fantastic. Kina?
I guess one of the real positives that I see out of this is people understanding more about the relationship between healthy air and healthy people. My fear is that they are jumping to quick fix solutions that they don't know that much about. That may or may not be a better option. It may be a worse option, and it might be really, really costly. So that's kind of my positive and negative, I guess. But I will also say, as far as burnout and the work being the toxic thing, the biggest, or I guess the best thing I've seen out of companies who I feel have a healthy workforce and healthy boundaries is when the leadership team really embodies that culture of, you know, having a work-life balance, separating when you need to, not sending emails at every hour of the night and on weekends, and really promoting empathy and human-to-human connection again. So.
Great, thanks. Lauren?
I'm going to put in my reminder plug to remember ergonomics, no matter where you're working. A lot of people are talking about hybrid work, and does that mean you get an ergonomic station at home and at work? I sure hope so. Working at your kitchen table for extended periods of time is not recommended. So just another complexity, you know, Kay mentioned how complex and intentional we have to be about hybrid. I would remind us that we can't forget about our dear friend ergonomics. And I would say that our my like push is, our goal should not be let's go back to how it was. Our goal should be, how can we do better moving forward?
All right, thank you. Well, thank you for all this great information today, great conversation. And thank you in particular for being such great resources to our community. I know that you are every day with the teams that you're working with, and we really appreciate that. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Meg.
And I'm just gonna wrap it up with a couple administrative things. I want to say thank you so much, Donald and panelists, for a great conversation. There's some more questions now in the chat, but we'll have to continue the conversation another time. To continue the conversation, and Corey, if you'll pull up the slides, we actually have our next forum on April 21st, and it's Designing for Planet Wellness. And it looks like it's coming. Planet Wellness is, of course, inextricably linked today, and we will be gathering in person for this one at the gorgeous and sustainable new Uber Mission Bay building designed by RMW. It's LEED V4 Gold and WELL V2 Platinum. You can attend virtually as well if you like, but you must register in advance. Registration closes April 17th, even though the event is on April 21st. Registration closes on the 17th. That's an Uber guideline, and attendance is limited. So please spread the word and get your tickets now. We're really looking forward to apps and a great conversation and a tour, and it'll sort of continue the conversation that we've had today. And then for some housekeeping, for those looking for CEU units, CEU credits, CEUs, if you are registered with IDCEC and you have the app on your smartphone, you can simply track this QR code and register. Everyone who attended today will be bulk recorded with IDCEC. And if you're not registered, you will then receive an emailed certificate for your attendance. These presentations were recorded and will be available for review. We'll send a follow-up email to everyone on the call with that information, and it'll also be published on the IIDA Northern California website. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for a great conversation, panelists. We
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donald.
Thanks a lot.